All right, family, what's the vibes? How you guys doing? I'm sure obviously you trust that I'm going to say something about, what's happening in the financial markets. And, this just goes on to prove all of the things that, we spoke about in the market outlook this morning and how things can change really quickly. And your ability as a trader to get aware about, what is happening and be able to move with that, not holding, past judgments or past news as what is supposed to move the market is exactly what makes you a better trader, right? None of us really know exactly how these things are going to be pushed around because we're not in control to actually do that. We can only read the information and act on it. So one of the things that happened is as we were saying these things this morning, we saw that spike happen, right? And very quickly, we started to understand that there was a tweet by Trump. Right. So I want to quickly just go over all of that and just, talk about how, all of these things would affect the markets and how we need to view the markets because obviously we had a change, but we need to talk about it. Now, the first thing we want to see is what exactly was the news release? What exactly was the news release? So let's actually go. I think I was just looking through the news some hours ago, right? But we would see, right? Trump says US and Iran in Trump says US and Iran in talks after he postpones the strike on power plant. So what did Trump say? Right, US President Donald Trump told CNN there are 15 points of agreement between US and Iran after talks this weekend. He announced that he would hold off strikes after the Iranian energy sites for 5 days after earlier threatening an attack if Tehran did not let the Strait of Hormuz fully reopen. So if you think about days back, you saw that Trump was actually talking about how he's going to again make attacks on Iran if we don't have the Strait of Hormuz actually fully get open, right? And now today he's making a tweet about, oh, okay, we're actually holding this thing off. We're actually coming to a consensus, which was one of the things I was saying this morning. Trump needs to bring the war to a close because midterm elections are coming, and this guy cannot allow that there's a war coming into midterm elections. Those things are not going to just fall in good for him, right? That's one of the things I really think is happening, right? But when you think about this, he's saying he announced that he will hold off strikes against them. That means he's no longer attacking them. But look at what happens. Look at the interesting thing I want you to watch here. Iran responds. Iran's foreign ministry said there was no dialogue between Tehran and Washington. And if you see, immediately the news dropped and things just skyrocketed. I said, I hope this is not one of Trump's news release again, where he just tweets something, the market just reacts to it, and nothing really happens. Things spike, and then it's just a manipulation for the actual real thing to happen. Remember the tariffs that happened last year? We saw the S&P, we saw NAS fall, couple percent down, and just days later, weeks later, we see things just coming back into play the way they are, right? So you want to really, really pay attention with the news because again, what you would start to hear around or what you start to see around is people already thinking about buying dips. People already thinking about buying dips on things like gold. People already thinking about buying dips on the currencies. People already starting to short the dollar. Now, but let's look at it critically. We've just talked about, the fundamental aspect of it. There is no clear direction, and how I want to think about it is if we're going to see oil escalation, right, or the escalation in oil prices or in the Middle East, if we're going to see oil drop, right, what we want to see is both parties actually accept that, you know what, we're actually letting this thing go. We're actually putting the war behind us. We don't want to see one party saying, oh, yes, we've already had the dialogue, and the other party saying, no, 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 no. There's no dialogue yet. We're not ending this thing yet. That is still uncertainty. I remember uncertainty is exactly what is driving the markets into shit. Is exactly what is allowing gold just fall off because if we're having uncertainties, risk assets would suffer. Right. When we have periods of wars and uncertainty, we would see risk assets, the gold, the stock markets, as they've been falling, we would see these things happen. But right now, we saw a spike based on the fact that, oh, okay, we are actually probably ending this thing again by President Trump. What I want you to think about is the Trump or the US military is the strongest military in the world by statistics and all, right? So if they are saying they want to put an end to a war, right, the market should react like this because they are good enough to actually put an end to the war. But that doesn't mean that Iran won't put up a fight. And the fight is going to still bring up uncertainties. So, like I said earlier today, if we're going to see things change, we want to see, continuous downfall of oil, right? Remember that all of these issues is being, linked to oil prices being escalated. We are seeing, inflation rally higher because things become expensive when oil rallies, right? So if we're going to actually see oil start to bottom out, that would mean the escalation in this particular or in the Middle East. We're going to start to see that, oh, okay, yeah, these people are actually agreeing on this. And yes, if oil starts to drop, we're going to see, the market actually recover. We're going to see, the stock market starts to go higher. If you look at the markets today, you would see that NAS actually gained 0.1%. We would see XPX up 1.5%, and it was up about 4% at some point when the news came in. You'd see very, very large things happen. But again, do we trust exactly that huge spike just because of that tweet? Especially because the history of this tweet has not actually been anything that actually leads the market long term. It's always, a manipulation, and then the price just returns higher. So I want you to have that in mind, right? If you think technically also, has oil really broken any market structure? Not really. Not really. We've just had that spike and price just stops there. Look at all of the other pairs. We'd see gold also. Yes, rallies higher, right? Big rally from what he did earlier this morning, right? I was able to take, some partials up here, but rallies all the way back, all the way here, right? Now, does this mean gold is going to start to go higher? It's a good point, right? If you think about it, if you think about the last range form, right? This is discount enough to start to see price rally higher, right? But is that exactly now gold longs? Is that what you want us to view as gold longs? I would say, in my camp, if I'm going to have a gun to my head, because again, I really do not know how things actually would play out, because, we can have news release, we can have conversations already going on how, okay, we're going to have the Strait of Hormuz open, we're going to actually start to stop this war thing. And that just continues the market, and the market just keeps going high. But going to my head, I really still think there's still pressure, right? And if there's still pressure, we're going to have higher yields and gold is going to fall. So again, there's going to be a whole lot of, story about moving price higher or gold moving higher, the dollar rallying lower. But watch price action. Just watch and see. Are we actually seeing continuous break to the upside? Is that what is really happening? After the spike, did we see follow through? Are we seeing follow through? And if we're not, then I'm still going to just head wind, to bearishness or sell side for the precious metals, right? Again, I want you to look at the technicals. Yes, I've talked about, things on I've talked about things on the fundamental front, but look at the technical analysis. We talked about this range as the range we're watching. And I said, until we start to bottom out this low, until we start to take out this low, I'm still bullish on this asset class. Yes, we saw that fall happen today, takes out last week's low, right? Look at the weekly time frame I like a lot, right? Takes out last week low, and it's just Monday. So we can just have, price run out last week's low. Last week's high is still a draw here. So we can still have things just still lead up into buy side. Nothing has really changed in terms of buy side here. For me, everything is still the same. Everything is still the same. So until we start to see real movements that actually close below old lows, especially on this time frame, we start to see a close below this low, then that can start to signal to me, as maybe some type of bearishness coming in on the dollar. But I don't want you to start to just think about price as, oh yeah, because of the news release, this is what's happening, this is what I didn't face. Nah, that's not how to think about it. It is merging all of these factors together. I said there are three things you want to watch when you trade the forex market. What are the fundamentals saying? What is technical analysis telling you? And then what is the market tone saying? The market tone is telling you what are people trying to do right now. And just go online, you start to see buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip story on gold. Right, and that gives me a contrarian feeling or a contrarian approach to price, right? If I'm seeing buy the dip, I want to look towards selling. Let's look at other things that got really, really good readings as soon as price or as soon as that news release coming. We saw NAS expand higher, but after the expansion, it just stops. No follow through still, right? We saw S&P also rally higher also, and then starts to just release lower here, right? If we look at GBP, one of the pairs that we actually trade in here, we haven't still taken that high still, right? Comes very close to it, but not taking it yet. Euro USD also, if you look at that, we have not really broken market structure to the upside. So until that happens, right, what I'm still going to be looking at as the least path of resistance, right, would be sell side, right? I want to see price, just continue to go lower. That's exactly how I'm thinking about this, right? And again, what you want to think about in this time, my advice is make sure that you're not over leveraging no positions. This is not the time, right? There are uncertainties everywhere, and nobody really knows a thing, right? So yes, there are ideas that we're going to be engaging with, but there's zero need to start to over leverage anything here, right? And there's more need to be patient and actually watch out for plays that you actually believe that actually follow your system. That's exactly why I'm doing this video, so that you do not get scared, but actually start to get prepared for what is happening, down the week. It's going to be an interesting week. We're going to see volatility playing, but what you want to do is make sure you're risking less. If you trade things like gold, you don't need a whole lot of risk to actually make a whole lot of money. I think I've been trying to demonstrate that on the Discord so that you can actually see what is happening. So again, go back into your charts and make good decisions. Do not make rational decisions. Oh, GU is now running higher, right? Well, really, is it? It just expanded higher, and maybe you got stopped out from the move that you had. I'm sure anyone that was trading GU had a stop out from that move this morning. Right. And if you think about what some of the ideas that I talk about when I teach technical analysis, it's kind of like this is the point where you need to start to, take some partials. Yes, these lows look good, but again, if you look at the last range from this is discount. Right. So again, we're still inside of this range, and until we start to see a break to the upside, right, I'm still on the camp of sell side and buy side dollar. One of the things we need to check, as I've started to highlight recently, is the yield. So if we look at US, if you look at the 2-year yield, because the yield is really the story here, right? So if we look at the 2-year yield, what are we actually having? Yes, the news came in, we saw it slash to downside, right? But has that broken any market structure in any sense? No, we've just had price return back into old highs, which would really, if you think about technical analysis, this is a breaker, right? This is going to start to send price higher if we're still bullish. This is again is just a correction from old highs, right? Remember, when price rallies all the way high, all the way into premium, we don't want to start to view this as let me keep buying. There's going to be some correction in some sense. Look at it, expands all the way higher, corrects back, right? Expands all the way higher, returns or retraces, expands all the way higher and retraces. So this is something to watch out for, right? So again, another pair that I've been looking at is Bitcoin. Bitcoin also caught a bid today, about 5% in movement, and technically you can see that this is reacting from a bullish order block, so this can actually be good for buy side. Watch out for that fair value gap. Not like I trade this, but I really think that maybe this is starting to look like a bullish market structure. Look at how we have higher highs, higher lows just forming and forming like that. That could really start to set things up for buy side. Again, I'm open to start to watch the things that happen, but I said to give you guys some updates, right? And this update is going to run throughout this week. We're getting started at the inner circle next week. I think next week Wednesday. So we're going to have reviews every single day until then, just to see how I actually do these things, how I actually follow or think about these ideas, and how they actually follow through to the next day of me trading. All right, guys, I hope you learned something from this, and I'm going to see you tomorrow. Blessed family.